Welcome to Harrisburg. Where have you been? Ladies and gentlemen, today we are all homosexuals. You, me, every legislator, every staff member, every visitor to this Capitol is gay. And when the basic, because we are all Americans and because we are all Pennsylvanians, and when the basic human rights of any group are threatened, then no one's rights are safe. "45 years ago next month, President John F. Kennedy stood before the Berlin Wall and pronounced in his famous speech, Ich bin ein Berliner. He told the people of Germany that he and all free men, wherever they lived, were citizens of Berlin. He told them that although they bore the physical and emotional suffering, that burden was not just theirs alone, but it was an offense against humanity. So in that spirit, I stand here today in solidarity with you, and I stand here knowing that freedom is at risk in this building. Although I hope that we do not see it happen, it is possible that a legislative body could vote to embed discrimination in our Constitution by taking away the rights of a particular group of people based on their sexual orientation. I stand here today as someone who has placed great value on the guarantees of our Constitution from a very young age, because I personally felt the sting of discrimination. Although no one tried to take away my rights by legislative fiat, I was also often treated as someone different, someone who did not enjoy the same status as other Americans because I was of Italian descent with an Italian last name. Other children at the school I attended were not allowed to come to my birthday parties because I was an Italian kid from South Philadelphia. My family, my ethnic group, and where I lived was looked down upon. There were certain places that we were not welcome. I grew up putting great stock in the writings of Thomas Jefferson, who said that all men are entitled to life, liberty, and think about this in today's debate, the pursuit of happiness. Thomas Jefferson, who observed in 1789 in a letter to James Madison that the tyranny of the legislature is the most formidable dread at present and will be for many years to come. How prophetic. That warning is just as valid today as it was 200 years ago. The fears expressed by Jefferson and Madison and the other founding fathers were behind the Constitution that forms the basis of our government. They understood that the tyranny of the majority represents the greatest threat to individual liberty in any society. That is why they insisted on a Constitution that guarantees the rights of minorities. Our Pennsylvania Constitution is supposed to do the same, yet an effort is underway in this building to distort the purpose of that sacred document by using it to take away rights rather than protect them. I made a comment last week about this General Assembly and slavery. As I later said, it was exaggerating to make a point that just because a majority approves something doesn't make it right. I understand why my comments were upsetting to some people and why some people may have been offended. And yet, there will be votes cast in the Senate this week, perhaps not literally to enslave anyone, but nevertheless to relegate some people to a second-class citizenry by preventing them from enjoying the rights of a union as a loving couple. That is wrong. I am not the first to draw parallels between discrimination that is based on race and on sexual orientation. Coretta Scott King pointed out that her late husband, quote, Martin Luther King said, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." And these are still her words. "I appeal to everyone who believes in Martin Luther King's dream to make room at the table of brother and sisterhood for gay and lesbian people." End of quote. Julian Bond, former chair of the NAACP, has said, quote, "Many gays, many lesbians work side by side with me in the civil rights movement. Am I supposed to tell them now, thanks for risking their lives and their limbs to help me win my rights, but they are to be excluded because of the circumstances of their birth? Not a chance." Bishop Desmond Tutu of South Africa said, quote, "I could not for any part of me be able to keep quiet because people were penalized, ostracized, treated as if they were different than human because of something they could do nothing to change, their sexual orientation. For me, I can't imagine the Lord that I worship, that Jesus Christ, actually concurring with persecution of a minority that is already being persecuted." We should not forget that it was by a majority vote that slavery was imposed in this country. It was by a majority vote that persons of different races were forbidden to marry. It was by a majority vote that women were denied the right to vote and hold office. It was by a majority vote that poll taxes and ID requirements were imposed on the poor and African Americans who wanted to vote. It was by a majority vote that the government is today now allowed to listen to your phone conversations and review your financial records. And none of those majority votes were correct or moral or good or right. And as we contemplate Senate Bill 1250, keep in mind that, under that same logic, it can be by a majority vote that a free press may be censored. It can be by a majority vote that persons may be presumed guilty. It can be by a majority vote that unpopular religious beliefs may be outlawed. It can be by a majority vote that individual property may be taken without compensation. It can be by a majority vote that warrantless searches may be allowed. And it can be by a majority vote that the last protections of individual liberties and equal protection under law are swept aside. All of these things and more can happen if the full and equal rights under the Constitution are not guaranteed to all. And I tell you today to keep up this fight. It's not just for yourself. It's for the very people who are proposing this amendment in the first place, because their rights will soon be threatened as well if we allow this to continue. Thank you all, and God bless.